I knew buying 300 acres of wilderness in northern Montana was going to change my life, but I never imagined it would turn into a full-blown war with a homeowners association that had no legal right to even exist on my property. My name is Marcus Anakis, and I'd spent 15 years working as a software engineer in Seattle. I was done. The endless traffic, the gray skies, and that soul-crushing corporate routine. One day, it all hit me like a ton of bricks. When my company went public and my stock options vested, I cashed out. No more of that nonsense. It was time for a change, and the best way to do it was to find a piece of land in the mountains and start fresh. I found it just outside Whitefish, Montana. 300 acres of pristine wilderness, a few miles from the nearest neighbor. It had everything I was looking for: privacy, solitude, and the kind of space you could never find in a city. A small creek, dense forests, miles of trails perfect for snowmobiling in the winter. It was a paradise. The land had belonged to an old logger named Bill, who had passed away without heirs. His estate sold it to me at a price that felt too good to be true. The survey was clean, the title was clear, and within 3 months, I was the proud owner of more land than I ever imagined. I built a cabin at the eastern edge of the property, strategically placing it in a spot that offered both privacy and easy access to the main road. But what really made the place special were the trails. Bill had maintained a network of paths throughout the forest, perfect for hiking in the summer and snowmobiling in the winter. I spent my first fall there clearing brush, marking trails, and preparing for the winter season ahead. I even bought 2 top-of-the-line snowmobiles and invited a few friends from Seattle to visit once the snow started to fall. Everything was coming together. But then, just as I was settling in, things started to take a turn I didn't expect. In November, about 6 weeks after the first serious snowfall, I was in my workshop tuning one of the snowmobiles when I heard the sound of an engine approaching. I stepped outside to find a woman in her mid-40s climbing off a bright red snowmobile. She wore an expensive-looking ski jacket, designer sunglasses, and had a perfectly tight ponytail. She looked like she'd just stepped out of a magazine. "Can I help you?" I asked, wiping grease off my hands. "I certainly hope so," she said, pulling off her sunglasses to reveal sharp blue eyes that immediately sized me up, probably finding me lacking in every way. "My name is Patricia Morrison, and I'm the president of the Whitefish Highlands Homeowners Association," she said, barely looking at me as she pulled out a clipboard from her bag. "We need to discuss your snowmobile usage on the community trails." Community trails? I felt my stomach drop. "This is private property. My property. This is private property," I said, keeping my voice steady. "These are my trails." Patricia smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that made me feel welcome. It was the kind of smile a shark gives its prey before it strikes. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. The trails that run through this area have been used by the community for decades. Just because you bought land that happens to contain some of those trails doesn't give you the right to restrict access." "Actually, it does," I thought. "I own the land. All of it." "No," I said, my voice calm but firm. "These are my trails. I own this land. All 300 acres. You have no right to tell me what I can or cannot do on my property." She didn't seem fazed. Instead, she pulled out a folder from her snowmobile and handed it to me. "This is a copy of the HOA bylaws established in 2003. Article 7, Section 3, clearly states that all trails within the Whitefish Highlands community must remain accessible to all residents in good standing." I flipped through the papers, each one fueling my anger. "First of all," I said, "I'm not a member of your HOA. Second, Bill may have been generous with his land, but that doesn't create any kind of easement or legal obligation for me. And third, even if this were legitimate, it still doesn't give you any authority to control what happens on my property." Patricia's voice hardened. "We have rules about motorized vehicles on the community trails. They disturb the peace, damage the environment, and create safety hazards. Effective immediately, we're instituting a ban on all snowmobiles on these trails." I couldn't believe it. "You're telling me I can't use my own trails?" She didn't miss a beat. "Yes. If you violate this ban, we'll be forced to take legal action." I couldn't help but laugh. "Take whatever action you want. This is my property, and I'm not bound by your rules. If any of your members set foot on my land, they'll be trespassing." Patricia's face turned red with anger. "We'll see about that," she said, before climbing back on her snowmobile and roaring off. I stood there, fuming, for a moment before heading inside to call my lawyer, Dennis Chun. Dennis was a small-town attorney who specialized in property law. He'd handled the purchase of my land, and I trusted him. "Dennis, I need you to check something for me," I said, explaining what had just happened. "Is there any way an HOA can have authority over my property?" Dennis's typing echoed over the phone. "Let me pull up your file." "Okay, you bought the property from the Harrove estate, right? No easements, no restrictions. An HOA can only enforce rules on properties where the owners have explicitly agreed to be part of the association, like in a planned development. But in your case, you bought undeveloped land. There's no HOA agreement attached to your deed. You're not subject to any of their rules. They have no legal standing. So, if they try to stop me from using my own property, they're overstepping," Dennis said. "You can prosecute them for trespassing. If they keep harassing you, we can pursue a restraining order. They've got no case." That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. Over the next 2 weeks, I ran into Patricia and various HOA members a dozen times on my trails. Each time they lectured me, threatened legal action, and made it clear they weren't backing down. They refused to respect my boundaries, and I documented every encounter. Photos, notes, recordings, I had it all. The situation finally escalated just 3 days before Christmas. I was out on one of my snowmobiles, exploring a section of trail near the western edge of my property, when I came around a bend and found 4 people on cross-country skis blocking my path. Patricia was at the front, flanked by the same 3 people I'd seen before. I stopped my snowmobile and killed the engine. "You're blocking the trail. This trail is closed to snowmobiles," Patricia said, crossing her arms. "We've posted signs at all the major access points. If you continue to violate the ban, we'll involve law enforcement." I wasn't having it. "Law enforcement will tell you exactly what my lawyer already has. This is private property. You're trespassing." "We're not leaving," said one of the men, a stocky guy in his 50s. "This community has rights that predate your ownership." I pulled out my phone and started recording. "For the record, I am Marcus Anakis, the legal owner of this property. I'm ordering you to leave immediately. Your continued presence constitutes criminal trespassing." Patricia sneered at me. "Record whatever you want. We're not leaving until you respect the community standards." I called 911. 40 minutes later, Deputy Sarah Kowalski arrived. She was a no-nonsense sheriff's deputy, and after reviewing my property maps, my deed, and the recordings, she turned to the HOA members. "Madam," she said coldly, "this is private property. You need to leave." Patricia protested, waving her bylaws around. "These are HOA bylaws. They have legal force." Deputy Kowalski glanced at the papers and handed them back. "These bylaws have no legal force on private property where the owner hasn't agreed to be bound by them. Mr. Zanakis has made it clear you're not welcome here. If you don't leave immediately, I'll cite you for trespassing." The HOA members slunk off, but Patricia's glare told me this wasn't over. Deputy Kowalski stayed behind for a quick chat. "I've dealt with this HOA before," she said. "They're persistent, even when they're wrong. Get some proper signage marking your boundaries. Document everything, and if they come back, call us again." The next few days were quiet, and I followed her advice. I posted signs every 100 yards along my property lines, installed trail cameras, and made sure everything was documented. Dennis also drafted a formal cease and desist letter to the HOA. Then I caught them on camera. Patricia and 2 other HOA members were on video sabotaging my trails, dragging logs and debris to block them. I called Dennis. "I've got them on video. What are my options?" "File a police report," Dennis said. "What they're doing is criminal mischief." I drove to the sheriff's office and filed the report, providing the video footage. Deputy Kowalski took my statement. "I'll forward this to the prosecutor," she said. "In the meantime, I'll pay Patricia a visit and make it clear this is unacceptable." 2 days later, I received a certified letter from the HOA demanding $5,000 in fines. They claimed I was violating community standards. I emailed it to Dennis immediately. His reply was swift. They've just made a huge mistake. They can't fine you. They have no legal standing. We'll start building a harassment case. But I was getting tired of playing defense. It was time to act.